I think the fairest way to do this is I've asked Commissioner Drew to go through the cards. That way it's a randomness on how you get called up here. And then during the break, Commissioner Macbeth asked how I wanted to go through these motions after we hear public testimony. I just want to give you some idea how I perceive this going forward. He asked if I was going to break out the map from the time and break everything out and do motions separate. And I think in fairness to everybody that participated in this committee process and to the committee members, I would like to take the original motion, a vote on what the committee had recommended. So if it was a map and time put together, Northern Nevada, Southern Nevada, and its calendar day, and that's what the committee recommended, we take a vote on that. If that vote fails, we got to figure out why it failed. Was it the time duration? Was it the map? What was it? And see if we can work around it. But I think in fairness to the committee, we vote on what the committee recommended first, and if it fails, then we start breaking it down and see where it shakes out. So with that being said, who do you have first, Commissioner Drew?
Let's go Dave Stillwater, and Jared Ward would be after Dave.
Okay, and Jeremy's going to give you 30 seconds before you're up, or before your time is up. He's going to time it for 3 minutes. And at 3 minutes, we're going to start interrupting and keep everybody at 3 minutes. So, all right, thank you.
Dave Stillwater, District Director for the Nevada Trappers Association for Clark and East Nye County. We've went on over these maps and everything, meetings forever. I never have agreed on a map. And then we have meetings in Vegas for 8 hours. Nothing gets accomplished except the fire. What the heck was that? The demerits, which I didn't agree on anyhow. But the whole thing is, we were never told what the problem was. To this day, I don't know what the problem is. And you keep saying throughout the day, if we got a problem, let's do it right. And I don't think anything's really being doing right. The map you never came up with in Vegas ends up being decided up in Reno. There was no teletype or anything where we could see it. To me, that seems real strange. That'd be like going to Vegas and say, okay, what kind of area do we want to give up on Reno? I don't have a clue. The McCulloughs down in Vegas, that's one of the areas that was cut off in here. It takes me an hour and a half to drive 10 miles back behind the hills of Henderson, where I trap. That is not congested. There's many places that aren't congested. To make a long story short, I see we have no problems with the trapping we have right now. The 96 hours is great. I hear 48 hours and everything. Yeah, maybe in the firearms zone. But I've trapped for 30 years down there. If you went to 48 hours, I'm through. Probably 80% of the trappers are through because a lot of people work. You take off that Wednesday so you can do the Saturday and Sunday. That's the only way you can do it. You got to have the 96 hours. I could go on, but other people will hit all the spots I missed. Thank you much.
Jared Ward. And then Bob Bruner after that.
Jared Ward for the record. I trap in the south, trapped a lot of these Clark County areas. This map you got here, I haven't done so much, maybe one little area here. For the Reno area, I really don't know much about that. But 96 hours works great. Whether we got a snowstorm or hurt your ankle hiking, a quarter mile to set a trap or any of that, you need it to heal up. You got traps out. It's hard to tell somebody where they're at to go check them for you. But anyway, I like the 96 hour throughout, not to change anything. However, I have considered maybe instead of a handful of traps, if we have to go 48 hours or 24 or whatever it might be, one might think that snares would be appropriate or coney bears. Well, that's not the traps that we're talking, the foothold traps, but we can go our 96 hours. I think I could get by with 48 of them. Maybe a dead animal there for maybe a day, day and a half. I've had bobcats kill my fox, and still after a couple of days, if the temperature's right, we're good. They're sure not easy to release if somebody's not taking care of their dog and they're letting it run loose. You know, I've always steered clear of the, you know, those snares and coney bears, you know, but that'd certainly be an option if you're putting us there by 48 hours or 24. I like the commissioner that says a 96 and all his ideas. I was a little skeptical on the Vegas meeting about him, but I think you make a lot of sense. Thank you for your time, all, for everything you've done so far. I know it's not easy.
Bob Bruner, and then Joel Blakesley.
For the record, Bob Bruner, I'd like to ask that you turn down the subcommittee's recommendation. As Commissioner McNitch said, everybody's interpretation of what SB 213 was. Well, I went to those meetings. I went to the legislator. I heard what they had to say, and I heard the input from Nevada Public. And basically, what happened is there was a tremendous amount of opposition to changing these trapping rules. And we had people in Vegas, and we had teleprompters in Elko, and then everybody in Carson, and those ratios remained the same. There was over 350 people that didn't want any change, and there was less than 30 that wanted change. And so the legislature said, again, in my opinion, whoa, this is a loser. You guys deal with it and take a look at that close proximity stuff. There's also a website where you can go into SB 213 and you can vote. You have to put your address in there. So if you take your address out or you take a look at it, you can see California and Germany and everything voting that they want change. And then we've got almost 1,200 people, Nevadans, that are voting no change in trapping. So again, we can see the same ratio in this room. And so they just kind of dumped it on you. And so, you know what? It's already lost in the legislature. And instead of taking an unpopular vote, they just passed it on to you. But that's what I saw happening. The heavily used and congested language that's in the, you're just finishing up on that. You're just supposed to consider. 213 says consider. And with all the documentation and all the hearing and testimony, it's been considered. So you've done your job. You've considered it. You can see the input here. It's like, this is done. There's nothing more that can be done here. We considered it. We did what you asked. As far as these heavily used and congested areas, if you make that determination at this time, what you've done is you've given these county commissions the opportunity to go ahead and close all of these areas as a congested area because you just determined it was. So we can have no more deer hunting here. We can have no more sheep hunting here. We just close these areas. That's not what we want to start today. We don't want to do that. And so, and again, with wilderness in both of these areas, again, we're not focused on what's going on. And then also the financial impact, I believe, on the request that was submitted is incorrect. There will be a financial impact. Those folks that have critter control companies, those folks that go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday around town as a professional, as a small business, and then they go around and repeat Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there will be a financial impact if they have to do their Monday, and have to hire more people.
Right.
So please reject the subcommittee's recommendation. Thank you.
Joel, and then Dane Bradfield.
Before you start the clock, is it 3 or 6?
If you're representing the Nevada Trappers, you're 6.
Okay. Joe Blakesley, Nevada Trappers. I would like to say that we're going to talk about maps and visitation and everything right now, so I'll hurry. And I'll say that, or maps and demerits, I meant. Both of those things have been heard before. Visitation has been heard in 8 different legislatures. And every one of those legislatures that heard this exact same thing said no. So understand, you're not the first board that's heard this. I've done this before for 30 years. Demerits have been heard by previous commissions, and they've said no. I've sat in front of committees, and I was asked by a couple of commissioners whether I was getting shaken down. You know, there are reasons not to do these demerits, and I've discussed them in the committees. I've been standing between the drafter of the demerit regulation and law enforcement for 20 years. We've done this time and time and time again, and it's always been no. So you guys are about to break a precedent if you do anything with this other than either turn it down or go by the Nevada Trappers Association recommendation, which is to introduce science into this process. There are 3 things you can do with visitation. You can can it, you can go with our recommendation, or you can create some maps. Now maybe somebody else knows something else. We've rejected the maps from day one. I was asked what I thought about the maps, and I said, until I know why we're doing them, I'm not going into that trap. Anyway, they're both bad laws. When you do demerits, you're attempting to influence behavior. And if you go with the visitation, you're going to create a position where you're going to end up with abandoned trap lines. And I've said that before, and that's the truth. So are you going to make things better, or are you going to make things worse? That's the question you guys have to do in your mind. Are you going to influence the behavior where we don't want it to go? If you do reduced visitation, you're going to create a position where more conflicts are caused with the public because we're going to be closer to the roads and the trails. So these are bad regulations. Not every regulation is a good one. You're looking at bad ones. Time up?
I don't think so.
No,
Bill.
you still have 3
You got
minutes.
3 minutes. You were under 3 minutes.
Well, I want to talk about, it was stated that distribution was a problem. Is distribution a problem? Has anybody quantified that? I hear all kinds of statements about this and that and the other and what's happening. Do we know how many dogs have been caught in traps? Do we know how many people have violated the law, with the exception of me? I'll tell you another thing regarding that, and I found this out firsthand. There is no provision for circumstances that get out of control as far as demerits. I had that discussion with the DA, had that discussion with the judge. There's no provision for that. So, if you're going to talk about, and the statement was more egregious violations, maybe there's the other side of the equation where we talk about less egregious violations. Three demerits is based on the fact that you can get a violation for every trap you set. Now, law enforcement has said that's not the way we treat it, but in fact they have in the past. And in fact, that can change with a different chief of law enforcement. So when we did this before, we discussed, everybody kept telling me that I needed to put something in writing. I said, well, you know, what about the other side? What are you going to do? You going to put it in writing? We talked about bait. I said, okay, you want more demerits? How's it going to be? How are you going to guarantee me that I'm not going to get a violation for a feather that's 29 and a half feet away? Well, we just don't do that. Said, put it in writing. We went through hours and hours and hours of warden directives, what the wardens are going to do. Everybody's quick to say what we're going to do, but there's always two sides to every equation. Why don't we talk about how these things are going to be handled? If somebody loses a transmission, is he going to get his 6 demerit points? Right now, there's no provision for him to get any mercy. So I say leave it at 3, because more egregious and less egregious. So anyway, the 3 things that can happen. The worst one is to accept the committee recommendation. There's not one county in this state that has agreed with it, to my knowledge. Not one. Now maybe there's one I didn't hear about. There's a couple I don't know.
30 seconds.
The second best is to deny the committee recommendations. And the best one is to go with the Nevada Trappers deal. Let's get some science on the table, do some studies, put some education in place. And as long as I'm talking about education, as long as we're involved in it, we're all for it. But if we're going to get told how to do it, maybe we're not that interested in it. So,
Okay,
thank
you're
you.
up, Joe.
Dane and then Kevin Strozzi.
First, I wanted to, I appreciate the time that's been put into this topic. It's not easy for anybody. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and I would say to vote down the committee's recommendation of the maps. I believe that a statewide check of 96 hours is appropriate. There are provisions in place to protect around trails, roads, structures already there. And I know it's all in the back of our minds. Is this just the tip of an iceberg coming towards us to stop trapping, hunting, any kind of recreational use of the public lands in the future? Thank you.
Kevin and then John Sullivan.
Kevin Strozzi, Nye County Advisory Board, for the record. I'll just start by saying Nye County voted to oppose any change in the 96-hour trapping regulations statewide. We feel it should be kept 96 hours everywhere. Speaking for myself, normally me and Chairman Rob agree on most things. On this, we do not. I feel, and I strongly feel, if you want to see conflict between trappers and other users of that public land, then make it 24 hours in those areas, and then you're going to see conflict. You're going to force all those trappers who have to work a 9 to 5 to stay right there. And I really don't think you can just drive down the road 15 minutes further and get into a 96-hour. You heard Dave Stowwater back there. He's been trapping forever down there in Clark County. And it takes a long time to get out of the city and get into those areas, and you just can't do it after work. And those guys are still going to trap. You're not going to get rid of trappers. And trappers aren't going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to trap this year because it's 24 hours. They're going to go, hey, where can I go run a dozen traps, and I can check them after work and stay legal. And they're all going to be trapping on top of each other, and they're all going to be trapping where everyone needs to go walk their dog because they're going to be forced to stay in those areas. And one other thing I just wanted to ask, and I know it's extremely difficult with all the stuff that this commission has to deal with and all the support staff has to deal with and all the stuff we have on these agendas. But when we have these type of agenda items, you know how many people show up and you know how much time it takes. Can we put these agenda items in the morning so that if we do have to table something or it gets really, really late, because I would say that probably 90% everyone in this room is here for this agenda item. Thank you.
John and then Shannon Ireland.
Yeah, John Sullivan again, speaking for myself. The young fellow that was two speakers ahead of me talked about the tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit. You know, I think this issue is quite a bit bigger than the maps or, 96 hours versus this versus that. And I'd like to project a little bit, if we pass this today, we pass the maps, move on, what will it really solve? Where will you all be? Where will we all be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. We're involved in a political process to, we all know, to ban trapping in this state, step by step by step. What before us today is one of those steps. It's not the first step, it's actually the third step. The first step was about 4 or 5 years ago when we thought we had a trail issue in Washoe County. Trappers came together and said, yeah, we shouldn't have trapping on those trails. Everybody agreed, the Wildlife Commission acted on it, we closed 4 trails in Washoe County. That was step one. Well, we kind of naively thought we were dealing with the trail issue. Then came SB 226, and it was a trail issue as well, but it was a little bigger than trails. It included some 4 roads that wanted to be closed. It involved 1,000 feet, or regulations about 1,000 feet from residences. So all of a sudden, it was quite a bit bigger than just trails. And that passed. That was step 2. And people then thought, well, if we can just do this next step, kumbala, peace will reign. And here we are, 213. The ink was not dried on 226 before 213 was written. So this is a progression. This is a political process, step by step by step. And the end game, if we keep down this road, is we will eliminate trapping like other states have. Eliminated use of all footholds. Then the game turns on hunting. Then the step by step by step on hunting. That's what we're involved in. You look at California. I did some research, pulled up a newsletter from the leading animal rights group in California. Since trapping's all been banned, their highest priority in the legislature and the Wildlife Commission in that state is the use of dogs. It's hunting with dogs. Their goal this year is to ban the use of retrievers, pointers, setters, any dog in hunting in that state, followed by archery. Step by step progression. So
30 seconds.
So I think you should please keep that in mind. This is a precedent. It's a bigger issue than what's before us. It's a step-by-step progression. And, if anyone thinks, we're going to end it here, or this is, somehow going to solve some problems, I respectfully disagree. I think this is, until somebody steps in and says, especially the Wildlife Commission, that we have, great practices and procedures in this state, and we support what we're doing, and this is the end of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shannon, then Corey Lytle.
Shannon Ireland, for the record, Clark County. I've attended several of the meetings, and everyone knows that before a certain incident, I was not involved in the politics, had no idea about the CAB meetings, legislation, none of it. We've had some issues, in these meetings, there's been the talk, as you said, about the education on both sides. And I would have loved to have seen that been played out to help with the decision of where we went with, these different areas and the hours that would be allowed to trap in those areas. Now, of course, as a trapper, we don't want to see any change. But, what's going to happen is going to happen. We're going to fight it. If we didn't, then it would just go away. So, I brought up the coyote issues in Las Vegas, in Clark County. Nobody wanted to hear them or about it, and just sweep it under the rug. And I believe that the coyote issue around Clark County, Nevada, is directly correlated with the original, was the SB 213 that got us a little bit away from residential areas. This is 1,166 pages just from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Now, they're all event numbers, which is over 8,000. There's 8 event numbers on each page. They're all animal-related calls or animal disturbance. I got North Las Vegas Animal Control to cooperate with me, and they reported 13 dead and alive coyotes in that area. Henderson Police Department and Animal Control cooperated with me, and they have over 1,000. They were able to break it down into indigenous species. not just domestic animal disputes. I was just notified via email that I would receive the hard documents in writing within the next 2 weeks to 6 weeks. It was a race to try to get information to show some kind of correlation between, taking the trapping, farther away or shortening it. You're going to bring them in the basic outright
30
denial
seconds.
of the coyotes, being an issue in Las Vegas because of some of the restrictions made already in trapping. I am trying to get it. Probably won't get it before anything happens, maybe before August. But I don't want to see any change. I mean, I'm a professional. I have a wonderful son sitting right over there. I have 5-year-old twins. I
Okay,
do
you're
my
thr-
best for all of them, and I
You're-
learned trapping for them. And if it wasn't for the background as a sportsman and, the family,
Okay, we're at 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to
okay,
ask you to wrap it up.
then I wouldn't have raised my children the way that they have come out. And I bet any one of these men in this
Okay.
room that have met him can say what
Okay.
good it's done for him.
We're at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rock.
Corey and then Jana Wright.
Did you fill out a card for me?
For those of you who have spoken and not filled out a card, I have your name on a list.
Oh, you're a good man.
So you just got called out.
Corey Lytle on behalf of Lincoln Cab. We voted for the 96-hour trap check statewide and to keep the demerit points where they were. Long discussion, lots of issues. I don't even want to go into everything. We've hit it here. I appreciate, the diligence and the hard work you guys did on the committee. And I also can appreciate the amount of resources that it took for the department to kind of follow through with that. And, it's a big drain. We're all for the education. We're all for some more studies. We're all, all for putting more science down on the table. And so that's where I want to end.
Jana and then Tracy Truman.
Mr. Chair, for the record, Jana Wright, Clark County. I come before you today. It's been a twisted road to get here. And although I want a shorter trap visitation statewide, I accept that the committee did not have an appetite for that, and I really don't think the commission has an appetite for that. So I wanted that shorter visitation because it was a humane aspect for me that not only the animals that are targeted being trapped, but non-targeted animals, in my opinion, needed to be released or killed or harvested, whatever words you want to use, before 4 days passed. That's the reason I'm here. I asked the commission to support the maps that the committee approved. I would like to say that the northern map obviously expanded from the discharge area, and I think that is why Commissioner Robb, who I know has driven that area, knows that area, and even though I want more, I respect him and I back him on his maps, and I think that will meet the mandate of Senate Bill 213. Thank you.
Tracy and then Amanda